Hello, this is Marco from Kissyourfriends, and this is my Korg Electribe ES-1. It's a drum machine. I sometimes use it when I play solo, or when Travis and I play as a two-piece. But currently, the way we play as a three-piece, it just gives us a click track in our in-ear monitors. Right now, it's broken. So in this video, we're going to try to fix it. This is a guitar pedal. You can see on the power jack, there's a little pin in the center. Right there. That is the negative contact. Your typical guitar pedal power supply will be center negative. The ES-1 takes the same kind of power plug, but as you can see, that center pin is missing. It has fallen into the machine, so we're gonna have to replace it. Basically, the plan is start unscrewing stuff until we can get the circuit board out, unsolder the power jack, and either somehow find a power jack with the same physical footprint, which shouldn't be that hard, just tedious, or use one I have laying around and wire it to the circuit board and then probably 3D print a little thing to mount it in the existing hole. What I'm wondering is whether I'm going to have to take off all these knobs in order to get the circuit board out. It would really suck, especially if they all have nuts like the one that I just uncovered. But might as well just start disassembling, and if we end up having to take the knobs out, we'll do that. Sometimes there's more than one circuit board inside of a case like this, so I'm hoping that the knobs are soldered to the one closest to the top of the machine, and maybe the power jack is soldered to the circuit board that's on the bottom. It does turn out to have two circuit boards, but I'll have to take the knobs off anyway. Spoilers. The interesting thing about this machine to me was that this bottom plate here, it's just a chunk of metal. It's probably aluminum, and everything in the board is grounded to this piece of metal, which is just interesting to me because I don't really see that very often. But I guess a lot of guitar pedals are straight up built in aluminum cases, but they're usually painted and they have rubber feet. I don't know. Maybe it's more normal than I think. It just strikes me as strange that there's this giant metal plate that's exposed to the outside world and all the electronics are touching it. Maybe that's more normal than I think. I've just never taken apart a piece of gear like this before. Okay, yeah, no, I think about like cars and motorcycles, their electronics are grounded to their chassis. So if cars and motorcycles can do it, that's probably pretty normal. But then again, I think of how sensitive music gear is to noise, and I wonder, well, no, because I think of modular synths and stuff, and all those little units are built on aluminum faceplates, I think. But are they all grounded to them? Well, yeah, like a bunch of the knobs are mounted on there, and they're just made of metal as well. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's not that crazy. I'm just not used to seeing this. Anyway, there you can see the circuit board, and all those little thin metal leaves are what touch against that metal plate from the circuit board on the inside, grounding it. So that's the power jack, and I'm looking for the pins that we're going to have to unsolder. It's those three big fat ones, because it's under a little bit of mechanical stress being plugged into and unplugged from. And actually, I think what broke it is somebody stepping on a power cable that was plugged into it. So that's what we're aiming for. This bundle of cables definitely means that there's two boards that have to speak to each other, and you can actually see the top board down there. That has me optimistic while I'm recording this footage. But like I said earlier, I will end up having to take the knobs off. I just saw 2 circuit boards and assumed that conveniently the knobs would be mounted on the top one. And that was incorrect. Maybe the top one is where most of the computer processing happens. I don't really know. It took me an embarrassingly long time to realize that I did actually have to take the knobs off in order to get the board out. So I'm going to skip over a bunch of this footage and explain to you why I do really need this thing to be working again. It's pretty important to the Kiss Your Friends live setup right now. We are a 3-piece rock band, which means bass, drums, guitar, and having only one guitarist can make it tricky when you write songs that have rhythm guitar and lead guitar parts. There's a few of our songs that also have synths and extra layers, and the way that we cover all of that ground is by using a looper on my guitar pedal board, and Sungjin has a Roland SPD-SX, which will trigger samples for certain songs. The way that we can keep the samples and the loops that I cut all in sync with each other is by using a MIDI master clock. Earlier this year, I finished building a pedal for my guitar pedal board that is basically an Arduino chip in a guitar pedal enclosure. The beautiful thing about Arduino is that you can tell it to do whatever you want. And what I want it to do is interpret some inputs like foot switches and an expression pedal, and output MIDI signals. And the most important MIDI signal in this context is the MIDI clock. Now, the Roland SPD-SX that I mentioned has a MIDI output. It can play a click track, but it cannot output MIDI clock, which is infuriating. By the way, this is what's so broken about this thing. Check it out. Zoop! That is the power jack, and it is not supposed to look like that. However, the pin is actually in fine shape. It's pretty sturdy in the back of that plastic housing. It just so happens that the plastic housing is busted right now. But it's plastic, and both pieces are still intact, and they fit with each other. So we're just gonna super glue it and clamp it, and it should work fine. Yay. Makes my job a lot easier, actually. Where was I? Right, so there's more than one reason we couldn't use the SPD-SX as the main MIDI controller. And that's because I wanted to control more than just the MIDI clock. For example, I have a Walrus Audio M1 on my pedal board, which is a bunch of different kinds of modulation bundled into one pedal, and it's controllable via MIDI. And so I have my controller hooked up so that the expression pedal controls the depth of the effect, for example. It also allows me to summon specific patches for specific songs, or just not have to deal with accidentally hitting both switches when I just meant to bypass it or whatever. Long story short, I wanted all the MIDI signal to be coming from one place because that's just so much easier to manage, and at least as far as MIDI goes, the SPD-SX could not do everything that needed to be done. Plus, it was a fun challenge. I like programming, I like building stuff, I'm kind of a nerd, so it was fun. I'm going to make a video about that thing eventually. It's just not done being edited and all that. I work slow. My looper and the SPD-SX and the ES-1, which we're fixing right now, all receive MIDI clock. The looper uses the MIDI clock to cut the loops exactly on the beat, which takes the imprecision out of trying to do loops live. The SPD-SX uses the clock to play back the samples at whatever tempo we need them to play at. For example, in our song Glow, we have a sample that's more of a backing track. It has some synth layers and it needs to be in sync with the rest of the band. And we might be playing that song at a different tempo than we recorded those samples at. It can use the MIDI clock to adjust and play them the same speed that we're playing the song live. The Korg ES-1, his whole job is to just output the sound of a hi-hat every quarter note. This gets piped into our in-ear monitors on stage, keeps us all in sync. I can record loops at the right tempo, Sungjin can trigger samples on the right beat, etc. Eventually, I would like to employ a smaller unit to accomplish this task, because the ES-1 is just a lot of physical space to use on just a metronome, basically. Ideally, I'd like to build one. I feel like it's within my capabilities. I would just have to explore other microcontrollers than the Adafruit Pro Trinket that I put inside the pedal I've been talking about. I don't think those things can output audio, really. But it'll take some research. Point is, the ES-1 was a machine I had on hand. It could do what I needed it to do, and eventually we will use it to play beats and stuff live. We just haven't gone that far yet. So to recap, basically we just need this thing so we can listen to the same tempo our MIDI gear is all listening to, and the humans and machines can play together in harmony. Almost done putting it back together. I appreciate you for watching and listening. I know this isn't the most focused YouTube channel you've ever seen, but I'm not really out here trying to be a YouTuber like that. I like making stuff. I like fixing stuff when I can. I hope this encourages you to try and fix your own gear when it breaks. Sometimes it's just super glue. Sometimes it's maybe resoldering something or replacing a component. But anyway, this bad boy's working again. That's my video. I hope you have a nice day.